Hello, it's Graham Cope with another Move TV. Today I'm going to be speaking to Andy O'Hare. Andy, nice to meet you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Graham. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Andy, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
So, what do we do? The simplest way what I always say to people is we help busy business owners wear less hats. And what does that really mean? I suppose you think about when you start out in business. Most people start in business because they've got a great idea, something that they want to do. Like for myself, for example, I really wanted to do stuff with computers. That was my idea. I'm the technician and the one who wants to build it and put it all together. And that's how most people start out in business. But then they end up having to wear the accountancy hat and the marketing hat and the sales hat, and it just goes on and on and on like that. And one of them is IT. Now, a lot of people will go, do you know what? We're all right. We can look after our IT for ourselves. But then it gets to a certain point where it just becomes really, really difficult and really hard for people to manage it successfully. And that's basically where we come in. We take the headache away, allow them to get on to do what they're good at, which, let's face it, if they focus on what they're good at instead of solving IT issues, then they're probably going to make more money in the first place and make more money than what it costs us.
Yeah, well, we've all had bad days with IT, haven't we? Where we've
Absolutely.
We've kicked the box and we've sworn at the screen, and we've tried all of the usual things like turning it off and turning it on again, and it hasn't worked.
Well, I'll have you know that does work most of the time.
All right, okay. but we don't charge for that.
Absolutely.
What tends to be the sort of level of business or size of business where it gets beyond a joke, if you like, in terms of the amount of time people have to spend fiddling in order to try and rectify things?
I suppose it ultimately depends on the business and the type of work that they're doing. But I mean, we've got some one-man bands who we help, without a doubt, but we've also got some bigger businesses. The sweet spot seems to be when companies have got somewhere between 6 and 12 members of staff. It seems to be the point where they go, do you know what? This is just getting out of hand. I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm having to set stuff up. I've got everyone coming to me, asking me questions about stuff, and this is not my area. This isn't what I do. So that tends to be the sweet spot where people are going, do you know what? I've not had IT support before, but that seems to be the level where they go, right, maybe it's time to start looking at it. But as I said, it ultimately depends on the business type, really,
Yeah. What is it about that size of business that means that they need the help? Is it because at that sort of level you're starting to deal with a lot more sort of permissions as to what people should be or shouldn't be putting on their computers, and you're certainly dealing with a lot more passwords, maybe, if you've got multiple applications? What are some of the things that typically you would get involved in?
Well, those kind of things, what you've just said, absolutely. But also, as well, even just from simply the placement of a computer on a desk, we've been brought in with companies, and we've gone to see them on site and install some of our software, and they're showing us something. And I'm sitting watching them, and they go, right, okay, we just do this, and it sits there and it's wearing away, the little circle of death, as we call it, or the little egg timer. And it takes ages. And they go, oh yeah, we normally just go and make a coffee and come back, and it's just about starting to load. And I'm like, guys, you do know that that's not normal, don't you? And the problem is that most people don't know that that's not normal, because that's all they've ever seen. That's all they've ever faced. So to them, they just accepted that as that's normal with IT. So it seems to be that, those size companies, they've bought maybe the PC World computers and stuff, and they've got Windows 10 or Windows 11 home licenses on there, and they can't do a lot of the business features that they know that they should be doing, but don't really know how to do anymore, because obviously they maybe used to work for an enterprise where they call the IT department and sort it all out for them. So it seems to be when they're at that level, they start noticing, they start feeling that kind of stuff, and that's where the real inefficiencies are in place. So by replacing those machines, all of a sudden, they're not wasting hours every day for stuff to load. They're actually able to instantly do things because they've got machines which are spec'd for purpose. And then obviously you've got stuff like managing email accounts or simple things like an email signature on the bottom of an email. We all know how professional it looks when we've got a nice email signature on the bottom and a little disclaimer or whatever it is. But most companies don't know how to do that, or they spend a lot of time manually creating these signatures that they just don't have to do. We can automate a lot of this stuff. So it seems to be that level where they realize that they've been manually doing it and putting a lot of hours into these things. And the thing is that they know as well that the hours that they're putting into, we probably solve in half an hour for them. And it seems to be that realization, really.
Do you think that a lot of it is, generational as well, or doesn't it seem to be generational? In as much as I've certainly, in terms of, you mentioned there people perhaps buying the wrong machines in the first place. A long time ago, when I first started in business, and we had typewriters, or massive great mainframe computers, which sat in a big room with tape, that I used to have to wind round every night, or big Winchester hard drives. The thing is that only a few people could buy computers, and there was kind of a legacy that came on from that, which was that computers are very expensive, and therefore over generations people have gone like, well, we've bought computers, we've had them 5 years, we should get another 5 years out of them. That's not the case these days, is it? I mean, technology moves on at such a pace,
Yeah, absolutely. Technology literally is changing. As long as this conversation is going, something else is happening in technology. Some new thing is coming out. It's so hard to keep on top of, and I think that's again part of the problem for businesses, is that they've started to get to that point where they're like, I just don't know anymore. I don't know what I should be doing, because it's like last week it was this and that, and then this week it's that. But yeah, you're absolutely right from the generation point of view. Like, for example, we look at like devices now. A washing machine. How long do you get out of a washing machine these days? We all expect to get like 10 plus years out of a washing machine. You tend to find that it's usually as soon as the guarantee's gone is about how long a washing machine lasts. And it's because those devices aren't really built to last anymore. But we kind of expect it. But when it comes to computers, there's this weird sort of attitude towards them that people think, oh, I just want to spend 200, 300 quid on a computer, but they expect to get this premium device that works. And what we hear a lot is, people go, oh, well, I went to a Mac because PCs are rubbish. And I go, well, okay, so how much did you spend on that MacBook there? And they go, oh, $2.5 grand. And I go, okay, so if you had to spend $2.5 grand on a decent computer, you would have something which is better than the MacBook. But when it comes to, you're trying to compare it to a computer which would cost you 300-400 quid, and it's not the same. It's just not the same thing at all. That's the cheaper end computers. I mean, I started out. My sister's 10 years older than me, so when I first got involved in computers, I was 8, and she used to have this computer, this big, huge thing, which cost about 2 grand for this big hunk of nothing. There's more power now in probably in a calculator, let alone a phone, than these old computers that we used to have back then. But they just, for me, seeing how much they've moved in a couple of years, I was able to start pulling bits out of computers and putting new bits in and upgrading them. And that was the sort of the thing that we went through. Whereas now we're in that sort of era now where we're buying pre-packed stuff. It's, we're Dell partners, for example. So, we buy the Dell kit already built, already ready. And it's designed for what you want it to be used for,
In terms of software, that's changed beyond no end as well. We talked about hardware there, but back in the day, you used to sit there and load floppy disks into your machine to install a piece of software, and it would take hours and hours and hours. But and then you would get an upgrade through the post. It would be another couple of floppy disks, etc. But of course, nowadays everything's pretty much cloud based. How has that impacted your sector in terms of sort of what goes wrong with people and computers, and also in terms of support?
I'm glad you asked that. That's a really good question. And simply to answer it is, when you think about it, back then, all those computers were offline. They weren't usually internet connected, so they weren't open and available for anyone to be able to jump in at any moment in time. So it worked back then, and it wasn't as important to get them updates installed as quickly back then, because what would have happened, the likelihood of anything happening really on a device which was a dumb terminal not connected to the internet is very small. And anything that did happen was usually because one of your mates gave you something stupid on a floppy disk or something like that, and it wasn't malicious as it is now. The problem that we've got now is all of our devices are internet connected at all times. So we've got to start thinking that we've got to protect these devices for the best. And when it comes to software, obviously software is written by experts, but even these experts will leave things, gaps, loopholes, things that you're not going to know about until all of a sudden there's a security incident. And that's why we always say about, updates. You need to make sure that whatever you're doing, that your machine is constantly updating all the time. Now, the risk is sometimes an update can break things. But in my experience personally, it's better for that upgrade to break things and roll back than it is to leave it unpatched and literally have a massive gaping hole in your entire system. So I think that's where it is. So yeah, everything is cloud-based, which is great. It's give us a little bit more freedom now, so that we don't have to be sat in an office looking at a screen, doing everything on the one single desktop. We can be anywhere in the world and still do the same work. But it's really important that we know wherever we are that what we're connecting to is that secure. People connect to public Wi-Fi, for example, all the time. And I always remember going and seeing a guy, world's most wanted hacker at one point, a guy called Kevin Mitnick. And I seen him in Manchester. He was doing a talk, and he was talking about how insecure public Wi-Fi was. And he basically demonstrated this thing, which is, say, like you're going to connect to Starbucks Wi-Fi, and he had a device which was mimicking Starbucks Wi-Fi, and it was because you were closer to it, you would connect to that automatically. Goes through, looks exactly the same, but it's a man in the middle attack. So everything that you do goes through that device, or your passwords, or your documents. Everything that you're doing is going through there. So that's just a perfect example that although we're in this hyper connected world, we've got to be more security focused.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It strikes me that one of the things you were talking about there as well was the remote world that we now live in, and the fact that we are, although we're connected, we can work anywhere. How much more important is it in a way for people to have an outsourced IT solution like yourself, when a lot of people throughout the pandemic, for example, were leaving companies, were actually setting up as freelance, and we've now got a different kind of business growing in a way where actually you tend to have a smaller core amount of staff with a lot of businesses, and yet a lot of freelancers, a lot of people who are brought in, and actually that still needs coordinating technology wise.
It does. So we call it bring your own device, or BYOD. It's known as it is this change in environment where people are coming along with their own devices, connecting, doing freelance work and everything else. But now, whereas previously the gaps where I've got a company and this guy might work from home once a week, it was still a company device. You could still control everything that was going on with it. When it comes to allowing someone else to do it, you're effectively handing your data to someone else, but there are ways to control it. So having a managed IT service company is basically like having a trusted advisor in your company who you can go to and say, look, we've got these guys who want to work independently, they want to work with this data, but I don't know, they're based, one of them's based in India, or one of them's Saudi Arabia, whatever it is. How does that affect what we do? We can then sit down and look at the data residency. We work with other companies as well to do that, and make sure that, you're not just passing data to a country which you maybe shouldn't do because of GDPR, for example. That's just one little tiny example. But as well as that, we can also then say we can dictate what kind of devices are allowed to connect to the company network, what kind of devices are allowed to access certain types of information. If they create a company email address for these people and they want to access it on their device, then we can basically make it so that that device is checked and has Face ID enabled, for example, if it's an Apple device, or a PIN, some kind of additional formats. And a lot of people don't understand the power of two-factor authentication and things like that, but that's where we again would advise and say, look, make sure that they have all these kind of things installed, set up and ready, because then obviously that's protecting your data wherever it is.
The trouble is with things like that, and people watching might go, oh yeah, but you know what? I hate all this password things, and the more kind of ways that you've got to give a password or two-factor, and you've got to then put this in this. But there are ways of making that easier, aren't there? So for example, things like PUC keys or whatever, actual using bio data off your finger or whatever. There are different ways of doing it. You don't have to necessarily have hundreds of numbers that you've got to remember.
Exactly. There are. So yeah, for example, we can use the Microsoft Authenticator app as a standard, and if you're logging into something like Office 365, instead of it asking you for a code, which we know it's a pain, we've got to go into the app, we've got to type the code or whatever else, or instead of it sending us a text message where we put that code in, instead we can literally go to the app and hit the authenticate button. Yes, that's me. We're proving it, and then it'll look at your face, go, yeah, that's you as well. And so it is a simpler way of dealing with these things. But not only that, you think of big corporations. Do you think the big corporations do it like this for everything? I mean, the answer is no. They use single sign-on and things like that. So it's all controlled by the company identity, whatever that is, so that it auto logs into certain accounts and certain things for you. But also as well, one thing that people always talk to us, and what we talk about, is passwords. You know yourself, passwords can be the biggest pain in the backside, but at the same time, it's what protects you from other people jumping in your account. So if your password is Liverpool123 and you're based in Liverpool, I hate to tell you guys, but someone's going to know that, and someone's going to be able to get into your account. But not only that, when we started out in IT, even we had a basic password. You used it for everything. Every account you had the same password, and that was fine at the beginning because we didn't hear about these data breaches and all this kind of stuff. But quite quickly, it takes one company to not take their data seriously to have a breach, and then that password is available against your email address on the dark web. Instantly, when that happens, you've got a situation where these we'll call them threat actors, because that's what they like to call them these days, will pick up passwords and go, right, okay, I wonder what else, what other site combinations we can use that email address and that password on. And that could potentially be quite a lot of stuff. As well as that, how many email accounts did we all used to have? Silly ones, whatever else, but we'd have some kind of personal information in them. But most of us never ever closed those email accounts down. We just left them. But that'll have an insecure password on that email. So if someone gets into that, what can they find about you in that information to be able to then use to reset your passwords and do everything else? So they're the kind of serious things that you've got to take into consideration. But there are ways to make things easier, but we have to take responsibility for. And I think maybe this is where people don't really understand, but the data that you've got access to, we can lock down certain amounts of data so that not everyone has access to everything. But the data that you've got access to, you've got a responsibility to make sure that it's only being accessed in the right possible way, and that you're not leaving it open to everyone else.
You know what? The more we talk, the more I believe actually that the majority of people out there are doing it all completely wrong. So we're buying our tech in the wrong way because we're probably buying it expecting it just to last forever, whereas maybe what we should be doing is renting it or buying it in a on a monthly basis with an upgrade, etc., so that actually we never actually own the latest technology. We need to be we certainly need to be using someone like yourself in order to help us manage all of this data and manage the way that we use things. And we're just doing it all wrong. So look, if anyone's watching this and thinking, yeah, I'm doing it all wrong at the moment, perhaps get in touch with Andy. We'll come to that in a minute, how we get in touch with Andy. But first, I mean, we've met through Move. Tell us a little bit about why did you join Move in the first place?
Move for me was different than all the other networking places. So, but I've been a member of BNI. I've done a lot of these open networking events. I've turned up to all kinds of different events. What I liked about Move was it's not just about standing up and telling everyone, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but not standing there sort of singing your own praises and telling everyone how great you are. It's not that. I think that's what BNI is. BNI is kind of, oh yeah, we're great because blah, 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 blah. And that's great. That's all right. But I kind of know, I want to know about the person. I want to bond with people in a better way. And what Move does for me is the little coaching session where you come with a problem or even something maybe you've read about, which actually you thought everyone should know. It's educational as well as being something that connects you with other people. And for me, that works. It's a combination of things, because when people come with a problem and you're all helped to solve it, you get to know them a bit more. They get to know you a bit more. It's more personal than, as I said, a BNI. And sorry, BNI, I'm not slagging you off or nothing. That it works for some people, just wasn't for me. Whereas this just I think it's just a great supportive environment, and there's some great people who are members as well, which I think makes a massive difference too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, it aligns to my sort of policy in terms of social media as well, which is that actually, if you come ready to shine a light on everybody else and give other people space and try and work together with people and collaborate with people, that's actually when business gets done.
Yep, absolutely agree. Yeah,
and I just think it's like there's a lot of, even outside of the networking side of things, I think there's too many people trying to do things in business where it's all about me, etc., as opposed to what can we do together, and if we want to change the world, if we want to make the world a better place in some shape or form, that's never going to be one person or one group of people doing that on their own. It has to be people coming together to try and do that together. And that's where I think, building community is really important thing. So listen, Andy, thanks for coming and chatting today. If people want to get hold of you, to have a chat about, what they can do with their IT, how should they do that?
You can give our main number a call, which is 0151 659 1659. That'll be answered by one of our guys here. Let us know what it is that you're experiencing or any issues that you've got, and we can arrange a proper one-to-one or what we call a discovery call, which is where we find out a little bit about your business, what kind of things are going on, what things you're doing, what you're using, and what your goals are, because it's important to know really what a company's goals are, what they're planning to do for the future, so that we can make sure that what we recommend now isn't just going to do them for the next 5 minutes. It's got to be something that is going to suit them for the next couple of years, so it's part of the plan. So yeah, give us a call on that. You can email me directly. That's andy@apocit.com. Or I've also got a bookings link as well, which I can send you to put on the old social medias. Feel free to book in an appointment with me, and we can go from there.
Lovely, thank you, Andy. Please do get in touch with Andy if you've enjoyed this as well. This has been Move TV. Do share this with other people in your network or community. The more we share, the more that we actually all grow together. Until next time, this has been Move TV with myself and Andy O'Hare. Bye for now.